There comes a defining moment in every person's life when reality hits like a freight train and you realize something that changes everything. The fairy tale ends, the childhood fantasy crumbles, the comfortable illusions shatter into 1,000 pieces. You look around expecting someone to step in, to fix things, to make it all better, and you discover the most liberating truth you'll ever encounter. Nobody is coming to rescue you. This isn't a tragedy. This isn't something to mourn or feel sorry about. This is your graduation day, from dependence to independence, from victim to victor, from passenger to pilot of your own destiny. The moment you truly understand that no external force is going to swoop down and transform your circumstances is the moment you discover the most powerful resource you've ever possessed: yourself. Think about it for a second. Your entire life, you've been conditioned to believe that salvation comes from outside. Parents will solve your problems. Teachers will guide your path. Bosses will recognize your worth. Friends will support your dreams. The government will provide security. Someone, somewhere, somehow will show up at just the right moment to make everything okay. But here's what nobody tells you while you're growing up. That mindset, that waiting game, that constant looking over your shoulder for someone else to take responsibility for your life is the very thing that keeps you stuck. It's the invisible chain that binds you to mediocrity. It's the silent killer of dreams, ambitions, and the extraordinary life you're capable of living. When you finally accept that the cavalry isn't coming, something remarkable happens. You stop waiting. You stop making excuses. You stop looking for someone else to blame when things don't go according to plan. Instead, you start looking in the mirror and asking the most important question you can ask. What am I going to do about this? This realization doesn't happen overnight, and it's not always pleasant. There's a period of adjustment, a time when you feel completely alone in a world that suddenly seems much bigger and more challenging than before. You might feel overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. You might feel angry that nobody prepared you for this reality. You might even feel scared because the safety net you thought existed was never really there at all. But here's where the magic begins. In that space between realizing you're on your own and learning to embrace that truth, you discover capabilities you never knew you had. You find strength in places you never thought to look. You develop skills you never bothered to cultivate when you thought someone else would handle things for you. The person who understands this principle becomes unstoppable because they operate from a completely different foundation than everyone else. While others are waiting for permission, they're taking action. While others are looking for motivation from external sources, they're generating their own fuel from within. While others are paralyzed by the absence of support, they're energized by the opportunity to prove what they're made of. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected from other people. This isn't about rejecting help when it's genuinely offered or pretending you don't need anybody for anything. This is about developing an unshakable core of self-reliance that makes you magnetic to opportunities and immune to setbacks. This is about building a foundation so solid that you can weather any storm, navigate any challenge, and create any outcome you decide you want. Most people spend their entire lives unconsciously outsourcing their power to others. They give their boss the power to determine their worth. They give their friends the power to influence their decisions. They give their circumstances the power to dictate their mood. They give their past the power to define their future. They scatter pieces of themselves across the landscape of their relationships and environments, then wonder why they feel powerless and frustrated. But when you reclaim that power, when you gather all those scattered pieces back into yourself, when you become the central authority in your own life, everything changes. You stop being at the mercy of other people's opinions, moods, decisions, and limitations. You stop being a victim of circumstances and start being the architect of your experience. This transformation requires you to develop a different relationship with discomfort, uncertainty, and challenge. Instead of seeing these as problems that someone else should solve for you, you start seeing them as opportunities to strengthen your problem-solving muscles. Instead of viewing obstacles as evidence that you're on the wrong path, you start recognizing them as the very things that will build the character and skills you need to reach your destination. The journey becomes different when you're the one holding the map. Every decision carries more weight because you know the consequences are yours to bear. Every success feels more meaningful because you know you earned it through your own efforts. Every failure becomes a learning experience instead of someone else's fault. Every day becomes an opportunity to prove to yourself what you're capable of accomplishing. You'll notice that people around you respond differently when you embody this level of self-ownership. Some will be inspired by your independence and drawn to your energy. Others will be threatened by your refusal to play the victim or participate in complaint sessions. Some relationships will strengthen as they're built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than codependency. Others will fade as they were based on shared limitations rather than shared growth. This is natural and necessary. As you evolve into someone who takes complete responsibility for their life, your tolerance for excuses, blame, and victim mentality decreases. You start attracting people who operate at your level of accountability and repelling those who want to remain stuck in patterns of dependency and complaint. The most powerful part of this realization is that it puts you in control of your timeline. When you're waiting for someone else to change your circumstances, you're operating on their schedule, their priorities, their availability. When you take full responsibility for creating the life you want, you're operating on your own timeline. You decide when things happen. You determine the pace of progress. You set the standards and execute the plan. This doesn't mean you have to figure everything out by yourself or that accepting help makes you weak. It means you approach every situation from a position of ownership rather than victimhood. You ask for help from a place of strength rather than desperation. You collaborate with others as an equal rather than looking for someone to rescue you. The shift from "somebody should fix this" to "how can I fix this" is one of the most empowering transformations you can experience. It moves you from being a passenger in your own life to being the driver. It changes you from being reactive to proactive, from being dependent to independent, from being a follower to being a leader of your own destiny. Your own destiny. This transformation isn't just about changing your mindset. It's about changing your entire relationship with reality itself. When you truly internalize that nobody is coming to save you, you stop living in the fantasy world that most people inhabit. You stop waiting for perfect conditions, ideal timing, or someone else's approval to begin pursuing what matters to you. The majority of people walk through life with this unconscious expectation that their problems will somehow resolve themselves. They believe that if they just wait long enough, complain loud enough, or hope hard enough, their situation will magically improve. They treat their dreams like lottery tickets, crossing their fingers and hoping their number gets called rather than taking deliberate action to make things happen. But you're different now. You understand that every single day you wait for someone else to change your life. is another day your life doesn't change. You recognize that every moment you spend looking for external validation is a moment you could be building internal confidence. You realize that every excuse you make about why you can't start today is just another brick in the prison you're building around yourself. When this truth really sinks in, you start moving differently. You wake up with a sense of urgency because you know that nobody else is managing your time, your goals, or your progress. You start each day knowing that whatever gets accomplished will be the direct result of what you choose to do with the hours in front of you. This creates a completely different energy around everything you do. Your workouts become more intense because you know nobody else is going to build your strength for you. Your learning becomes more focused because you know nobody else is going to develop your skills for you. Your relationships become more intentional because you know nobody else is going to create the connections you need for you. The beautiful thing about accepting complete responsibility for your life is that it eliminates the mental energy you use to waste on resentment, blame, and wishful thinking. All that energy that used to go toward explaining why things weren't working out, why people weren't helping you enough, or why circumstances were against you, gets redirected toward actually solving problems and creating results. You stop having conversations about what should happen and start having conversations about what you're going to make happen. You stop analyzing why other people aren't doing what you think they should do and start focusing on what you can do with the resources and opportunities available to you right now. This shift changes everything about how you approach challenges. Instead of seeing problems as evidence that life is unfair or that you need someone to rescue you, you start seeing them as puzzles to solve, skills to develop, and strength to build. Every obstacle becomes a chance to prove to yourself that you can handle whatever comes your way. The person who operates from this level of self-reliance develops an entirely different relationship with fear and uncertainty. When you know that you're capable of handling whatever happens, you stop being paralyzed by what might go wrong and start being energized by what might go right. When you trust your ability to adapt, overcome, and figure things out, you start taking calculated risks that other people wouldn't even consider. This confidence compounds over time. Every challenge you face and overcome builds evidence that you can handle the next one. Every problem you solve independently proves that you don't need to wait for someone else to fix things for you. Every goal you achieve through your own efforts reinforces the truth that you are the primary creative force in your own life. Most people never experience this level of personal power because they're too comfortable with dependency. They'd rather have the security of knowing someone else is responsible than the freedom of being completely in control of their own destiny. They choose the familiar prison of limitation over the uncertain territory of unlimited possibility. But once you taste the freedom that comes with complete self-ownership, you can never go back to being a passenger in your own life. You can't pretend that someone else is responsible for your happiness, your success, or your fulfillment. You can't waste time waiting for permission, perfect conditions, or someone else to change before you start creating the life you actually want to live. This realization transforms how you spend your time, who you surround yourself with, and what you focus your attention on. You stop investing energy in things you can't control and start pouring everything you have into the areas where your actions can make a difference. You stop waiting for other people to recognize your potential and start demonstrating your capabilities through consistent action. The ripple effects extend into every area of your life. Your career advances faster because you're not waiting for someone to notice your contributions. Your relationships improve because you're bringing your complete self to them rather than expecting others to complete you. Your health gets better because you're taking responsibility for your physical condition instead of hoping it will maintain itself. You start making decisions from a place of power rather than fear. Instead of asking what's safe or what others will approve of, you start asking what will move you closer to where you want to be. Instead of seeking consensus or waiting for encouragement, you start trusting your own judgment and taking action based on your own assessment of what needs to happen. This doesn't mean you become reckless or ignore good advice when it's offered. It means you stop looking for someone else to make your decisions for you and start developing the wisdom to make good choices independently. It means you become the kind of person who creates their own opportunities rather than waiting for them to appear. The world responds differently to someone who operates from this level of personal authority. Opportunities seem to find you more easily because you're actively creating conditions for success rather than passively hoping for good fortune. People respect you more because you respect yourself enough to take complete ownership of your life and results. Results. When you finally understand that rescue isn't coming, you discover something that most people never find. You realize that waiting for someone else to solve your problems is actually the problem. Every moment you spend hoping someone will step in and fix things is another moment you're not developing the skills, strength, and mindset necessary to fix them yourself. This isn't about becoming harsh or closed off to others. This is about developing an unshakable foundation that nobody can knock down. When your sense of worth doesn't depend on other people's approval, when your motivation doesn't require external encouragement, when your progress doesn't need someone else's permission, you become a force of nature that nothing can stop. The transformation happens gradually, then all at once. One day you realize you stopped checking your phone every 5 minutes looking for validation. You stopped making excuses about why you couldn't start that project, begin that workout routine, or pursue that opportunity. You stopped waiting for the perfect moment and started creating better moments through your actions. This shift requires you to become comfortable with being misunderstood. When you start taking complete responsibility for your life, people around you might not understand what's changed. Some will try to pull you back into old patterns of complaint and blame. Others will feel threatened by your refusal to participate in victim conversations. A few will be inspired by your example and want to know how you develop such unwavering determination. You'll discover that most people are addicted to their excuses. They've become so comfortable explaining why they can't succeed that they've forgotten how to focus on what they can do to improve their situation. They spend more energy defending their limitations than they do working to overcome them. They invest more time in explaining why change is impossible than they do in taking the small steps that would create change. But you're operating from a different paradigm now. You understand that every excuse you don't make is energy you can redirect towards solutions. Every blame session you skip is time you can invest in skill development. Every complaint you refuse to voice is mental space you can use for creative problem solving. This creates momentum that builds on itself. When you stop wasting energy on things you can't control, you have more energy available for things you can influence. When you stop looking for someone to blame, you start looking for ways to improve. When you stop waiting for perfect conditions, you start working with the conditions you have. The person who truly grasps this principle becomes magnetic to opportunities because they're not waiting for someone else to create those opportunities for them. They're actively building the skills, relationships, and reputation that attract the outcomes they want. They understand that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, and they're constantly preparing for the opportunities they're simultaneously creating. You start to notice patterns in successful people that you missed before. They all share this common trait of complete self-ownership. They don't blame their circumstances for their results. They don't credit their success to luck or other people's help. They recognize that while external factors play a role, their response to those factors is what ultimately determines their outcomes. This realization changes how you interpret setbacks and failures. Instead of looking for someone to blame or something external to fix, you start asking different questions. What can I learn from this? How can I improve my approach? What skills do I need to develop to handle this better next time? What assumptions did I make that turned out to be incorrect? These questions lead to growth instead of stagnation. They build resilience instead of resentment. They create wisdom instead of bitterness. They transform every challenge into a stepping stone toward the person you're becoming. The most powerful aspect of this transformation is that it's completely within your control. You don't need anyone's permission to start taking complete responsibility for your life. You don't need special circumstances or ideal conditions. You don't need someone else to change first. You can begin right now, exactly where you are, with whatever resources you currently have available. This decision ripples through every aspect of your existence. Your relationships become healthier because you're not looking to others to complete you or fix you. Your career advances because you're focused on contributing value rather than waiting for recognition. Your health improves because you're taking action instead of hoping things will get better on their own. You develop what can only be described as an internal compass that guides you through any situation. When external circumstances shift, when people disappoint you, when plans fall through, you have this unshakable core that keeps you oriented toward your goals. You become the constant in your own life instead of being tossed around by variables you can't control. This internal stability attracts external opportunities. People want to work with someone they can count on. They want to invest in someone who takes ownership of results. They want to partner with someone who doesn't make excuses when things get difficult. They want to follow someone who leads by example rather than waiting for someone else to show them the way. The compound effect of this mindset creates results that seem almost magical to outside observers. People look at your progress and wonder how you make things happen so consistently. They see your resilience in the face of setbacks and assume you have some special advantage or secret knowledge. What they don't see is the fundamental shift in how you approach every single day. You wake up knowing that whatever happens today is largely up to you. You go to sleep knowing that tomorrow's outcomes will be determined by tomorrow's choices and actions. You live in the present moment because you understand that right now is the only time you have any real influence over anything. This creates a sense of urgency that propels you forward. Not the frantic urgency of desperation, but the focused urgency of someone who understands that time is the most valuable resource you have and that nobody else is going to manage it for you. Every day becomes an opportunity to move closer to where you want to be, instead of another day of waiting for someone else to change your circumstances. You stop having conversations about what you're going to do someday and start having conversations about what you accomplished today. You stop making plans contingent on other people's actions and start making plans based on what you can control. You stop looking for guarantees and start creating certainty through consistent action. The freedom that comes with this realization is unlike anything most people ever experience. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's moods, decisions, schedules, or limitations. You're no longer waiting for permission approval, or perfect timing. You're no longer hoping someone will notice your potential and give you a chance to prove yourself. Instead, you're creating your own chances, setting your own schedule, and proving yourself to the only person whose opinion ultimately matters in your life. You. This isn't selfishness. This is self-ownership. This is the difference between being a passenger and being the driver of your own destiny. When you fully embrace this truth, you join a small percentage of people who understand that the power to change your life has been in your hands all along. You realize that waiting for someone else to save you was just another way of giving away the very power you needed to save yourself. The moment you stop waiting for rescue is the moment your real life begins. You have everything you need right now to start building the life you want. Stop looking around for someone else to give you permission, motivation, or a plan. The person you've been waiting for is staring back at you in the mirror. Your power was never missing. You just forgot where you left it.